Hi, this is the public policy cluster at Nichols and Dime, the official research platform for Center for New Economic Studies. And today we have panelists Sidharth, Aditi, Aarjavi, and Saumya for a discussion on the practice of moonlighting in India. Before we begin the discussion, just a brief about what moonlighting in its essence is. So it's like taking up an additional job apart from your primary employment, and it has been making headlines in the last couple of months, especially in the tech industry, which specifically now takes us to a first question. So, our first question for discussion is, how does moonlighting impact the economy and job market in the country? Aditi, would you want to take up?
Yeah, sure. So like everything, even moonlighting has its positive and negative effects, and I'll go with the positive before I go with the negative effects. So in terms of positive, it increases the income for the worker because moonlighting is basically having a second job. So with increased income, it also since you have additional income now, you have to pay additional taxes. So it increases the taxes of the government, which in turn increases the government expenditure. And with increased income, it also increases consumer spending. Now, an increase in consumer spending, what it does is it leads to demand pull inflation. There are two kinds of inflation. One is cost push and demand pull. And demand pull inflation is known to be the good kind of inflation because prices are rising because consumers can afford it. Then there's also um, skill development among workers where if, for say, I have a second job, I can sort of apply those skills. I can have an opportunity to apply those skills to my primary job. And there's also people, um, who want to start startups and they'll still find people to work for them. There's like a plethora of people who want jobs. So that's always there. So these are the positives that I can find in moonlighting. In terms of the negative, it causes underemployment, where individuals are unable to find full-time jobs, which leads to lack of job security. There's also a lot of competition for jobs in the same market. So an individual's morale would sort of go down. There could be decreased productivity because you're working for so many hours at an end, where it could also create boredom. It could long hours or any which way is not good for your health, and it could also lead to decreased work-life balance.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with what you spoke about, especially looking at the employee's perspective and their mental health. Anything else that someone else would want to add to Aditi's argument? Yes, Sidharth, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I had similar points to Aditi, but I think just broadly speaking, if I can characterize the effects into three sort of sectors: one is consumer side, second is producer side effects, and third is the government side effects. So for the government side effects, like Aditi mentioned, right, increased tax revenue would lead to a bunch of sort of secondary network effects like investment in infrastructure and long run aggregate supply growth and generally increase in equitable growth. These had increased disposable income, and this increased disposable income would boost GDP. And a tangible increase in GDP is GDP per capita is very inextricably linked to an increase in happiness, to access to healthcare, education, greater fulfillment of goods. Also, working like part time on at some other job, moonlighting, could lead to increased greater job diversity. For example, in one survey, I think around 20 to 30% of respondents cited being bored as one of the main reasons for working for moonlighting. That job diversity could be lead to more interesting lives and more fulfilling careers. And from the producer side, beneficial effects, we have increased availability of labor. because certainly this population of labor that's already employed can be somewhat again re-employed. So they're almost reintroduced back into the labor market, which increases the pool of potential applicants for the producers. And this could lead to reduced friction with startups who have less sort of sunk costs in startup costs in getting their business up and running. And that could lead to greater output, greater innovation, more entrepreneurship. But again, all these three buckets of effects have their corresponding symmetrical negative effects as well. Like the main thing again, Anti mentioned, the lack of leisure time on the consumer side, where the fact that you're working two jobs is often very stressful and difficult to handle. And the moonlighting is again is a symptom of a larger problem, right? In that the most often a higher pay desire for higher pay is what's causing the employee to moonlight of bad working conditions or just general dissatisfaction with their job. And moonlighting indicates these problems, although it doesn't cause them. Clearly, there is some underlying structural issue that's causing low pay, bad working conditions, and boredom with your job. And from the producer side, the negative effects include poorer quality of labor. And because even though this population of workers is almost reintroduced into the labor force, they're already overworked. They're working a job already. So their quality of work, their productivity might go down as they take up like second, third jobs. And they could also have conflicts of interest with if they work in the same sector as the company currently working for, which could cause the firm sort of to malfunction and to not produce as efficiently as they should.
I think Sidharth, you're Siddharth, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I was almost done. I just wanted to mention lastly that the structural problems that are indicated by moonlighting could cause some economic instability, or political instability because of the poor quality of life for workers. And oftentimes, moonlighting is a part-time job, but it's not on the same legal protections that a full-time job has. So that could cause dissatisfaction with the government, with so firms, and generally reduce the cohesiveness of the economy. That's it.
Thank you for giving both sides of the perspective, especially the employee perspective, which is often underrated here. Saumya, do you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I want to talk about this trade-off that currently exists. So all the accounts that I've read about moonlighting, where people self-report, most of them claim that moonlighting is more prevalent and more in discussion for jobs which have low wages and also greater replaceability. So that is why I think that this puts the employee in a situation where he has to make a potential trade-off between moving to a firm which has greater wages, or moving to a job profile which can give him or her greater satisfaction. So I think that if we allow people to moonlight, so moonlighting is actually potentially like assuaging the dissatisfaction that exists between employees, and this could lead to like reducing the employee attrition. And reducing attrition would of course be beneficial for the economy, because it will not only increase the productivity levels, but also when we look at it from the firm side, it reduces the additional cost that the firm has to incur while trying to train new employees or to conduct new placements. So I think that way, if we look at it from the firm side, while there are claims that moonlighting is reducing the productivity, it is also going to increase the productivity if there is lower attrition rate. So that is something that a lot of accounts overlook, I guess.
Right, that's a very optimistic view on the issue. Aarjavi, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think all the cluster members make wonderful points and they give like a great employee's perspective. But I think we should also count in the employer's perspective, because there have been a lot of industry leaders who've called moonlighting crooked, or like they felt that it's unacceptable. because like the concerns of the industry have to be noted and addressed adequately. We also have to worry about violation of confidentiality of projects being worked upon, or data access and maintaining data governance if those companies are affiliated with the government, or even intellectual property rights being misused for a few cases in point. For example, last month we talked about data protection. So the European Union General Data Protection Regulation, which is the GDPR, is also changing the way IT companies give out contracts with their EU clients. So I think addressing the employee's perspective is very important, but we should also make sure that there are no loopholes in when we do so.
That's very accurate, and it actually leads us to our next question, where we would be discussing the legal landscape surrounding the issue. So, Aditi, do you want to take up this question?
Yeah, sure. In terms of legal landscape, to my knowledge, there aren't any laws that sort of govern moonlighting. But in terms of contracts, like contracts have clauses that, they can either propagate moonlighting, but it's majorly to sort of curb moonlighting. So there can be all sorts of clauses like a conflict of interest clause where you can prohibit an employee from working for a competitor, or there's a disclosure clause where if an employee is working for some other business, for some other job, they have to disclose it to the company. There's a performance clause that there's a certain level of performance that an employee has to maintain. And if these clauses are not followed, then it could lead to that employee's termination. But on the brighter side of things, there can also be clauses that if an employee moonlights, their benefits will not be taken away from them. So all of these things can be added into a contract. Like employees need to be mindful of that while signing a contract. There can also be non-compete clauses, which is again on the other side of the realm, where you have to sign a non-compete that you won't work for a secondary job.
Right. And I think most of the legal recourses that are available are still very employee specific. And Saumya, would you want to add something?
Yeah, actually, I got a big smile because I thought this is what I wanted to mention also, because I mean, I've read cases like the United Food and Commercial Workers Union case and some others, which give the National Labor Relations Board the authority to intervene between the employer and the employee when it comes to moonlighting. And most of the times, the Supreme Court has held that the National Labor Relations Board has the authority to prevent an employer from interfering with an employee's right to moonlight. Now, while courts have always taken a supportive stance on moonlighting when they talk about the employee's side, but if I rethink about what you were just talking about and what Aarjavi mentioned about things like data protection, I feel there is greater need to have laws which help the employer to filter, filter clauses which help them to not just address concerns of whether it is ethical or not, but to address concerns of security of the work that they are doing. So I think that part is still weaker.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the last question, how public policy intervention can help us in dealing with the issue of moonlighting. Sidharth, would you want to take up this question? I think Sidharth is not audible. Aarjavi?
Yeah, sure. So I remember a comment by Rajiv Chandrasekhar, the Union Minister of State for Entrepreneurship, Skill Development, Electronics and Technology of India, who said that efforts of companies to pin their employees down are doomed to fail. So I think adding on to that, taking extreme measures may backfire. However, using strategic and thoughtful steps by implementing effective methods and taking like a diplomatic stance towards moonlighting might help curb it and control it and regulate it properly. So one ideation is introducing a moonlighting policy. So instead of banning employees from moonlighting, companies may take a diplomatic approach, like I said before. For example, Swiggy, who is one of the biggest startups of India that India has seen for food delivery, introduced a moonlighting policy that enables their employees to take gigs and jobs outside the company. And I think the economy is a very up and coming thing for India, and the employer should respect that. So, along with Swiggy, Tech Mahindra is also coming forward with the ideation of introducing a moonlighting policy. So this approach shows that the companies care about their employees, which inspires the employees to work with more vigor, passion, and enthusiasm. I think, like Aditi mentioned for the first question, that they need to be motivated enough to be held at one job and do it with enthusiasm. So I think curbing their secondary or tertiary income is not, or pinning them down is not a good idea, but like allowing them, but regulating it in a good manner is.
Yes, Saumya, you can continue.
Sure. So, according to me, while I think that there should be policies in place, when I try to play that scenario out, there are two things that come to my mind. So, if there is a kind of policy that prohibits moonlighting, one thing that it has to take into account is that when we talk about something like moonlighting, we talk about employees at the lower levels. But when we think about most C-suite employees, they are CEOs in one company, but are on the are BODs for multiple organizations, or are on the advisor board for NGOs or for government panels. And even a lot of them are angel investors. So if we look at that scenario, and if we do not have laws which run throughout the organizational framework, then moonlighting laws could create a sort of greater inequality in the society, because the affluent will have more independence and scope to grow, despite them not having the need to be that stable, because they already have good financial conditions. And secondly, when I think about a country like India, the other scenario is that the jobs that are spread out are in both formal and informal sector. So basically, if I think about something as simple as somebody who's a security, who is associated as a security guard with a security agency, that part of employment that he has, where he guards the premises at night, is a formal employment. And but what he engages with during the day might be something which is in the informal sector. And if we have laws which prohibit moonlighting, they would only apply to the formal sector, which gives people greater, it encourages people to engage more into the informal sector. So any law that we make, we have to take into account the context of employment that is there in India. There are two things. One is the inequality could grow, and second, when we think about this, we have to see that the law or policy penetrates to all sectors, not just the formal sector, because then there would be an increasing shift towards the informal sector employment, which could actually backfire when it comes to the GDP or the development of the country. So any policy that we come up with has to have those two things. And third, I'm sorry, I'm just taking it too long, but the third thing that I think about is that I read this interesting article about CIBIL score. So how CIBIL score works is that it motivates people to have a good to have a good score, so that they are people who are easily given like loans. So something like that could exist in the formal sector, wherein people have a kind of score that monitors their performance despite moonlighting or no moonlighting. So if there is somebody who's having a good score, the organizations themselves could actually recommend them to work in free time. For example, if I have good productivity, then they know that I complete my task faster than my peers, and I could be given options to explore within the company, or I should be like given options to explore which are related to the work that the company offers. This will not only help the employee to be more productive and have greater wages in case they are more productive, but also prevent the employers from having the idea that engaging in another job would lead to less productivity in the organization. So skill development takes place, but also through a channel which is more formal and encouraged. So I think something like that could be.
Thank you so much, Saumya. These were very insightful examples. And I think the need for a cohesive framework is actually the need of the hour. And yes, Aditi, you can.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat yourself?
Oh, yeah, we were just looking at the concluding remarks. So if you want to add in.
No. I think Saumya has done a pretty good job. I absolutely agree with her. You can conclude.
Okay. So I think in the end, since we've come to a consensus that there is a need of more formalization and a cohesive legal framework that could help us bring about a policy that addresses the grassroots level also and the upper echelons, including the employers and the employee. So that's it. Thank you so much. And yeah.